Welcome to the County Compass, Columbia County's guide to news, voices, and perspectives, hosted by County Manager Scott Johnson. This podcast is your behind-the-scenes look at what's happening in county government and across our community. We'll talk about the services, projects, and decisions that make Columbia County a great place to live. We're glad you're here. Thanks for listening to the County Compass. Now, here's Scott Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the County Compass, the podcast that keeps you connected to the people, projects, and progress that makes Columbia County one of the best places to live, work, and raise a family in Georgia. I'm your host, County Manager Scott Johnson. Some of you may have noticed or may have realized that we did not drop our episode last Monday. I hope that you did notice that and that you missed it and you wondered what was going on. And the reason we didn't do that is because we have a very special guest today. We have a surprise for you, our very first guest on the County Compass, so we were preparing for that. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce former Chairman of the Columbia County Commission, Ron Cross. Ron, thanks for being with us today.
I'm honored that you asked.
And the very first guest on the County Compass
Was the first countywide elected chairman.
Was the first countywide elected chairman. That's right. So, I mean, there's a lot for us to talk about. So I just want to take a minute to introduce Ron and I will say that Ron, we didn't really know each other before I took this job. I mean, I knew who you were, and we may have run cross paths. I think I was maybe doing a governor's detail with State Patrol. We met a couple of times or whatever. But I can remember back in the day that there was a lot of conversation that I was, I guess, the hand-picked guy, and I was one of the good old boys, and we've heard that a lot in Columbia County, haven't we? The good old boys.
Well, you want me to tell you that story?
Yeah, you go. You know what? Hey, let's go right into it. We'll go right into. I'd love to hear the story. Yeah, let's talk about that. How do we get here?
Well, the backstory was that in meeting with the bond people in New York, they were concerned about what happened if Steve Zablutsky retired.
Yeah,
and we knew that Steve was not a spring chicken anymore, and we got to looking. We interviewed some people, you among the group,
yep,
and another gentleman that had really good qualifications.
I remember.
And no permission to reveal his name at this point, so we won't. But
right.
It came down to two people, you and one more. And it went on, and Steve and I talked about it, and we kept pushing it off. And finally, one Thursday afternoon, I said, Steve, come Monday morning, we're going to decide. Think about it over the weekend. Of these two. So the weekend went, I'd made up my mind and I was going with the other guy.
All right.
Come Sunday evening, the other guy calls me and says, I'm going to take another job that allows me to continue some benefits that I had. And I called Steve and said, Steve, I made up my mind. So that's how you were hired.
There you go. Well, you know what? I won by default. So I got here by default because the other guy, who's actually a very good friend of mine, decided that he wanted to take a different job. And I'm glad he did, because that's given us the opportunity to work together now for many, many years. And he also gave me the opportunity, as I was going to do in the introduction, to really meet someone that has become a mentor for me. You have provided me with a lot of wisdom over the years, not just in government, but in life. And I'm glad to call you a friend and somebody that I look up to. There's only a couple of calls I make every Father's Day, but yours is always one of them.
It is, and I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us today, Ron. I appreciate that. I really do. Let's jump right into this. So let's kind of talk about the very beginning. So when you ran for chairman of the county commission, that was the first countywide elected chairman. Prior to that, the board of commissioners would elect a chairman amongst themselves, and it would kind of rotate. And I guess there was some thought that we needed somebody to represent the entire county.
And that was correct. They did need that.
And I think they did too. I agree with that. And you were our very first one. So let's talk about the race. First of all, why did you decide to even run?
I really don't know, except through the persistence of a real good friend, Dr. Jim Metz, orthodontist.
Yeah.
He started on me back in the summer of that year. And if you remember, the commission had 5 districts at that time.
Yep.
They reduced it to 4, and then with a countywide elected. And he said, that's something you should do. And I put him off, and it almost got too late. But ultimately decided to run and really had a good campaign. And it turned out having no clue as to what was involved or what
We're going to talk
it was
about
going to
that.
require.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I was at a point that I could spend, it's a part-time job, but I could spend more time on it than probably majority of the other commissioners, because they were still working full-time and having to use that majority of their time to support their families.
Now, a lot of people may not remember you had a very successful construction company. Now, I say successful. Over the years, you had your ups and downs like everybody else, and you worked your way through the highs and the lows. But in the end, you had a very successful construction business that you decided to kind of put on hold, maybe for office or time to retire. Or...
Well, we were phasing or dropping down a little bit. Had a couple of people that key personnel that left and did other things. A couple started their own business, and it was just time to kind of drop a little bit. I was getting up in years even at that time, not to mention where I am now. But it was time to do that, and we phased it out. But our last major job was the courthouse, of course.
That's right.
Is still operating and still standing. So I guess that says something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So, what we've talked about this before, but I want the audience to kind of hear this. What was your biggest surprise when you actually took office? You were running, you were kind of an outsider. You were a Columbia County guy. I know you grew up in the Greenville area, and I know your story, and we don't have to really get into all that, but you were here, very successful businessman. You'd raised your family in Columbia County, and then you've never been in politics. You run for office, and then you're the dog that caught the proverbial bus. What do you do with it, and what's your biggest surprise when you take office?
The biggest surprise was not necessarily internal to the county, Scott. It was the relationship with the cities.
Mm-hmm.
I found out immediately that we were a villain, that we took advantage of the cities and did everything we could to hinder their growth. And I couldn't put my hands around why the feeling was that way. And I found out it was more embedded within the staffs of the cities and the county than it was in the leadership.
Okay.
And I spent a good bit of time trying to bridge that to see with the commission of Grovetown and Harlem, city council or whatever, what the problem was. And frankly, probably never did really work it out totally, but we improved the situation a great deal.
Yeah, I think that's actually an issue statewide, and I've been very involved in statewide things through the City County Managers Association or ACCG, or even speaking at GMA or doing some things, working with those other groups. The GMA executive director is a very close friend of mine, and there's a lot of that city and county, I guess, rivalry, and we have the same mission, but we just carry it out in different ways, and I don't know that it's gotten. I would say that it's not been fixed. We still have that in Columbia County. I think we have a good relationship with our cities now. I do know that during your tenure and during my tenure here, we've done a lot for the cities in Columbia County. We've worked really closely with Harlem and Grovetown.
Well, we've made a special effort to do, particularly on SPLOST programs and other things.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So let's talk about those a little bit. So during your tenure, and I can go back and think of a lot of things, and you're not going to take credit for a lot of the things that I would probably give you credit for that you deserve credit for. But we made a lot of the major investments in roads and parks, and we did broadband while you were here. We built a lot of buildings, and for several years we were one of Georgia's fastest growing counties. At one time, we were one of the fastest growing counties in the nation. So when you think about that growth, how did you go about it during your leadership part? How did you go about making us a better place rather than just adding people or adding things, or what was the mentality behind some of the initiatives that you had to make Columbia County a better place?
Scott, it's kind of hard to explain, but everything I looked at, and Evans Town Center Park is probably the first and most prime example. I tried to picture it not as what I wanted, but what was good for the community. And every morning when I'd come to the office, I'd see a few people out in that field where the park is. And every afternoon or lunch or whenever, I'd see kids out there throwing the football and the frisbees and people laying around. And that parcel of land needs to belong to the county. And I approached the board at one of our planning advances and said, well, you can talk to Doctors Hospital, but they're not going to budge. They're going to put a bill in there. And that's what they told me for a long time, well, over a period of 4 or 6 weeks. It wasn't that long. But ultimately, they agreed that they would sell. And, of course, we got an appraisal. They got an appraisal, and we argued in, and we bought the property with no money to pay for it except reserve. And luckily, through always the goodness of the population, the citizens supported this SPLOST that allowed us to pay back that money to the reserve fund and to move on with some phase one of the construction. And that was the thing that I never could get several commissioners to understand, is take away the personal desires and what you would like to see as an individual because you like that sort of thing, and what was good for the overall population.
And Ron, you caught some heat for that. I remember looking back for that. They were especially some of our people in local news and newspapers at the time that didn't like the idea that we were going to do that. And you had to kind of stand in the firing line a little bit, I think.
Well, we were told that the county is not in the real estate business. Even some of the previous commissioners said they didn't think it was a good move, of which almost every one of them came back 2 or 3 years later and said, well, might have been wrong about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're gonna get that, and that's just part of the concept is people are going to be happy and they're going to be unhappy. The people that's happy they're not going to say very much.
Right.
The people that's unhappy are usually going to express it in one way or the other.
Right.
But I think it's proven to be a wise investment.
Yeah.
I think it's an important part of the start of this entire area here around the government complex. But it didn't go really bad. It's just you learn. Well, one thing I was told by a sitting representative that the minute you're elected, you lose 40% of your support. And I didn't think that for a long time, but I believe that's true. Because a large number of people are going to vote against an incumbent in the first place. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of people are going to find things wrong and just say, well, they're there, but we need to get them out of the way. So 40% is probably a pretty good number that you're never going to get full support if you're an elected official.
Yeah, which is tough. We've seen that, and you follow the local races here. I mean, the last commission chair race for the Republican nominee was separated by 105 votes. And so it was a 51-49 split. I don't know that I've ever seen one that close. We've talked about that on the podcast before. But I think you're right. I think there are a lot of people out there that are just, you lose that support, or they don't like what's going on, and I hate that because we are working to try to make it a better place, right? And that was one of the things that I was going to say. You talked about the park being kind of the beginning or the catalyst for what we did down here. And one of the things that I think I want to give you credit for, Ron, is your vision. The vision to be able to turn Columbia County into something more than what it was. Something better than what it was. Columbia County was great, but you just mentioned we didn't even have the money to be able to step out on a ledge like that. Now today we could probably do a little bit easier. We're in a little better financial shape, but a lot of that's due to that vision. So let's talk about that. Columbia County having the reputation now for being the premier place to raise your family. That doesn't happen by accident, right? So what were some of those deliberate decisions that helped shape that vision, and how did you continue down the path of that vision when everybody was telling you that it was the wrong thing to do? Even from there to the PAC, to adding on to the government complex, to buying the tax layer building, there were so many things that you did that I want to hear kind of the what helped you shape that.
Well, I don't know if I can really say, Scott. I mean, it's an accumulative thing, and you see one thing and you say, well, this is great, but it would be much better if we added this.
Right. And
you always go back to the support of the community to tax themselves. Mm-hmm. If we had not had that support, we would not have this facility like it is.
You're right.
They stepped up every time that was presented to them. Mm-hmm. Now, the first round of the TIA, we didn't, but being a regional vote, it carried anyway.
Right. Columbia County voted it down, and we still got it.
And a lot of people didn't understand that, but the next time around, they voted for it.
Right.
And I think the TIA, the Transportation Investment Act of 2010, advanced the traffic needs in Columbia County by 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
And the SPLOST program do the same thing. We got criticized for taking SPLOST money and putting it to widen Washington Road. Nobody liked that. We should do something better, let DOT pay for it. Well, that's good, but people didn't understand that DOT funding comes in 3 phases. You got planning and engineering, you got right-of-way acquisition, and then you got construction. Mm-hmm. Well, we wasn't even out of planning and engineering very much.
Right.
And it turned out to be a good move. But the SPLOST programs allowed us to have the funds to do the things that we thought should be done. Yeah. And overall, with certain people on the board most of the time, the first board I had a lot of problems with, a lot of leftover ideas and things from the past. Mm-hmm. And changing from 5 districts to 4, the countywide chairman, the second board on through the third and fourth was much better. And a lot of that belonged to the people like Ron Thigpen and Trey Allen and some of those that just agreed with what you were doing. And had a lot of support, more support than you would think, but nobody wanted to be real upfront about it. Right. So it was just one item at a time. They said, well, here is a need. Can we fill it? Can we afford it? What help can we get from the state? We've been trying for how long to get an interchange at Louisville Road?
We're still
20
trying
years?
to do that. At least 20 years.
Couldn't get the Army to support us. Well, we're not ready for it yet. We're not totally closed on what Cyber Command's going to do and how big it's going to be, which has turned out to be tremendous. Just little things that you couldn't get on board. Right. But you found something you could work with. We started with the deal with the Marshall family. Mm-hmm. Come in with the Williamsburg plan. It looked great, but then the bottom fell out. 2008, 2009, couldn't do anything. Wanted to bring 500 and something apartments or 900 and something apartments. Had a developer from Ohio that was ready to come in and made the boast that it's been approved because we could do 34 per acre. Well, no, that was in a narrative. That was not on the plan.
That's right.
Took us to court, wound up buying half of the property again with kind of borrowed money for a little while. You remember riding to Atlanta with the county attorneys and Steve's and $6 million.
Yeah.
And where are we going to get $6 million?
Yeah.
But it happened, and through whatever struggles, yielded what's there now.
That's right, and it's an amazing. We had I've talked about this before on the podcast where we actually have. Columbia County being largely unincorporated, we don't have a downtown. And that was one of our visions you and I talked about when I first came on was how do we create or develop this downtown atmosphere? And we've kind of been able to do that with our public-private partnership with Maybom that we did with the Maybom building. And people don't understand how that deal worked. We kind of got criticized for that recently about, how much the county gave them the land and what we did. That was a great deal for us. You remember how that deal worked, right? He bought all the land or got all the land and then did all the improvements, all the parking lots and all the everything, and then deeded everything back over to the county improved.
Tremendous partnership there with Maybom.
It was a great deal. And it started our idea for the downtown, and now it's kind of, I love to see it now. It's bustling when we have the market over there by the Performing Arts Center, which was another addition that we came up with later on. Said, we need this outdoor market, and when we have an event at Evanstown Center Park, or we have an event over behind the library, and sometimes we have events at every place at the same time, and it's just this bustling that we didn't have when you started.
Well, when Thunder hits town, it's madhouse.
It is. When Thunder's a game changer. That's exactly right. So,
but Scott, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I had some examples to look at over the years, and I paid them a lot of attention. One was the battle in South Carolina to get BMW to Greenville.
Yeah.
And Governor Carroll Campbell went out on a limb to get them. He did give away a part of the state, and he got criticized terribly for it.
Yeah.
But since that happened, there's been 27 other companies come to the Greenville area, Greenville-Spartanburg area, that support BMW that didn't get any incentives at all.
Yeah.
And that's a tremendous move. And that's a mainstay in that upstate area right now, is what the support BMW gives, along with some other companies that come in.
Yeah.
And there was another example there on Main Street in Greenville, South Main. I used to go there an awful lot. Had a friend that had a stereo shop. Sold Macintosh equipment. I couldn't afford Macintosh, but I'd go in and look at it. The city they condemned the two buildings that were left down toward the Reedy River, and it went to court. The owners wanted $900,000 for the two buildings, and the city, by their appraisal plus 10% limits that I believe we had too for a long time, wouldn't pay it. They went to court. They wound up getting awarded $3.5 million for those two parcels, what the court said. The mayor stood up and said, "We don't care if it's $10 million. This is important for the development of downtown Greenville, and we're going to pay it, and we're going to move on." And they did. And Greenville is now extended for another mile from what it would have been had that not happened. Mm-hmm. And I said, there is a politician with guts.
Maybe an ex-politician before long, but he's going to be a politician with guts, right?
He was reelected, and the ones that's there now supported him.
Yeah. And look at Greenville. I mean, that's what it takes, right? It takes that vision, and it takes the guts to be able to go out and do those kind of things. And that's why we elect. We have a representative democracy in our country, and we elect people to represent us. But, these days people want to jump up and down and say, you need to ask me before you make any decisions. Go to the voters for everything. And that's just not the way it works.
No.
We have to vote people in office that represent us, and you did a really good job of that when you were in office.
But I did have some examples to look at and compare with. Well, do you want to go this far, or is it too early to do this, or how should you really approach it?
Yeah. I know a lot of these because I got the opportunity to work with you for all those years that you were here before you were term limited. And by the way, that was something that you were in favor of.
Well, I initiated that, and I think it's a good idea. Yeah. And if I had, if some way I had some control, I would put term limits on every political office in the country.
Yeah. Well, we hated to see you go. I mean, as our first countywide chairman, you held that seat for 12 years, right?
16.
16 years. That's right. 4 terms. 16 years as a countywide chairman, and that continuity gave us a lot of boost, I think, in Columbia County. Thinking about that, so is there a project or an investment or something that you championed, that you were behind, that people might not, maybe they didn't know about it or know that you had anything to do with it, that you're kind of proud of, that you're quietly proud of? Anything kind of behind the scenes that comes to mind that you've worked on?
Well, I know you want to talk about it later, but
no, that's fine.
I think what we did out in Appling with the purchase of that land from the Pollard family, and what the sheriff has done with the training, the academy facilities is remarkable. And probably very few people know. They graduated 34 new cadets in April. Mm-hmm. They got another class that'll graduate in August. They come from all over the state. Mm-hmm. The sheriff still will not look me in the eye and let me tell him how much we need a dormitory out there, and maybe you won't either, but I think ultimately that could be a learning experience. And from the first day, county commissioner, the very first responsibility is provide for the public safety.
That's right.
Nothing else matters if you don't feel safe.
That's right.
And that facility out there with the driving track, the multipurpose building, the classroom building, and the real-time crime center, you wouldn't believe the impact that it's had on the crime rate over the last year. Mm-hmm. Because the camera system that y'all bargained for, and the money that you put behind that, the tag readers, the things that let you watch a crime actually taking place if you get a notice, soon enough. I think very few people in Columbia County realize what an asset and what an effort that takes to have. Very few counties have got anything near close to what they have out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And, coming from my background, it was an easy sell for me because, when you guys hired me, I was working at the training center in Forsyth, and I can remember going with the sheriff around visiting all the different places. And we were talking about building that out there and then having to buy the land for it. And again, that took vision and it took some planning and it took several years to get that up and going. And we've added to it over the years. We have that high-speed track out there and all that now. We've added to the range. We have an indoor shoot house. And these are the things that keep our deputies safe. These are the things that prepare them, because it's not an easy job to pin on that badge and to wear that gun and go out there and do these things. And you have to have that training. And not only is it expensive and time-consuming, it's really just difficult all the way around to send people to Forsyth for a whole week. And then what's the level of training? I think I was there, and I think we provide a good level of training there, but I know that our sheriff has instructors here, and he uses instructors from other agencies, and he gets to pick those. So we get the cream of the crop to kind of teach our folks, right?
And it's statewide. He's had people here from Cobb County, from Gwinnett, from across the state, and they're innovative. They're bringing in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu training that allows you, well, best I can understand, Scott, to restrain a violent person without being overly violent.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
Because I've done it. I know exactly what you
did.
do. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Really?
I was a defensive tactics instructor, and I spent a little time doing a little jiu-jitsu.
Oh.
I understand that. But I'm going to look forward to seeing you on the mat when they start that program out there. I don't think I can do it anymore, but maybe
Now,
you can.
I'm not going to be like your commissioner and get tased.
No.
I've seen that. I don't want any part of that thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me tell you one thing that people probably don't realize.
Sure.
And I never even said anything about it much, but the backlit street signs.
Yes, that's a great example. That is a great example. That's
It was
exactly what I was talking about.
Down in Fort Lauderdale for a car auction.
Yep.
And just walking the streets there by the beach. And Fort Lauderdale's a fabulous place to go. And I looked up at those single arms up there and the signs hanging down and the street signs that you could see from a half a mile away, and said, man, that's really nice. Came back and went to our county engineer at that time, who I'm not sure was really an engineer. Well, they're too heavy. Well, they cost too much. Well, just look into it and see what it would take. And he didn't do anything. But he didn't stay long. When Matt Schlochter became chief engineer, basically, he jumped on it. And I think now they're almost countywide, if they're not countywide.
Yeah. It's certainly the standard, anytime we replace when we put those up. So.
And I think that looks good. It's a good appearance and get good visibility. People know what street they're on or what they're turning on. Yeah. But that came out of just an incidental trip to Fort Lauderdale.
Very good. Well, Ron, we have a lot to cover here, and we try to keep these episodes around 25 to 30 minutes, so we'll keep people's attention. So I think what I'd like to do is we're gonna stop this episode for now, but I want to let you know that we're going to continue our conversation with Chairman Ron Cross. So we want you to tune in to our next episode. And one of the things that's going to have you do that is we're going to let you know, we always finish our episodes with the most ridiculous thing that I've heard lately. If you'll tune in to the next episode, you will get to hear the most ridiculous thing that our former chairman, Ron Cross, has heard lately. And we're going to talk about that. And we have a lot of other things to unpack and to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of the County Compass. Again, if you enjoyed it, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, leave us a review. More importantly, thank you for tuning in and thank you for being an engaged part of Columbia County and our community. Your input and participation makes our county stronger. So I will say stay safe, stay involved, and keep loving this county as much as I do, or we do.
We do.
Take care.
This has been the County Compass, Columbia County's guide to news, voices, and perspectives. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you taking the time to stay informed about the issues, initiatives, and people impacting our community. And we sincerely hope today's conversation helps you better understand the work being done in Columbia County. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. As always, visit Columbia County's official website or social media channels for additional information. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.